Hi everyone. As I promised, I'm going to come back and look at this 5A practice, the two questions for that Lumen assignment, since they weren't coming out right in class the other day. So just so you can see where I'm at, it's the in week 5, it's this QR5A practice. And what we're trying to do here is, it wasn't really the first question that anybody had problems with, but I'll just explain real briefly where these come from. So you're going to take, if it says in this case Texas to California, then you're going to take Texas, which is 40,750, and you're going to divide it by California, which is 57,500. Now that comes out to be, when I divide that, it comes out to be about 0.708695. I mean, that's way further than what we need. So keeps going after that. One of the things that I think may have been a problem, but I don't think it was the main problem, is this says to the nearest hundredth. And we were using to the nearest thousandth. We were using 3 decimal spots, and hundredth is just 2 decimal spots. So we want to round to here. So this is 0.71 right here. Okay, and since I'm in the teacher version, I'm going to go ahead and just get the rest of these. And I'm just going to pull them up, the answers up here. So these are the answers for all of these. And again, it's just a matter of taking the first state that's given and then dividing it by the second state. So again, we did 40,000 divided by 57,000 to get California to Texas. You would do the exact same thing, but you would use 57,500 and then 40,750 is what you would divide by, because you want the ratio in the opposite direction. So let me just explain cost of living just a little bit so that you can kind of keep track of what we're doing. So, and I'm sure some of you know already, but just to make sure everybody knows, what cost of living means is, in Texas, if you made $40,750, you could live in Texas at a lifestyle that is comparable to if you made $57,500 in California. And these are pretty broad. I mean, they're talking about, they have a whole state, and of course different cities have even different costs of living, but in general that's about how much. So out of these three, New York has the highest cost of living by a little bit, Texas has the lowest, and so on. So someone who made less money in Texas, somebody could on paper say, yes, that person makes less money, but they could live the same lifestyle as somebody that has 57,500 in California, because California, you have to pay more for gas and housing and things like that. So now let's go down and look at this other part of the problem. So in the other part of the problem, I was talking, when we were doing these in class, I was doing them with proportions, which does work. And I validated that what we were doing in class was not wrong. It's just that because we were using rounded values, it does matter for Lumen. It doesn't matter in the mathematical thought process of it. But for Lumen, it matters which order you put the number or put the states in, because it wants, it's using these rounded values. And so if you use this 0.71 instead of this 1.41, it's going to come out a little bit different. So we were not far off on our answers, but we were a little bit off because of that rounding. And Lumen is only accepting that one answer. And so let me show you what I mean by that. And there's a couple different ways to do this. I'm going to show you the way that that we did in class the other day, and then I'm also going to show you the way that Professor Andrews does it. So there's 2 different ways to do it. You can do it with a proportion, which is where you set it equal, and then you cross multiply. Or you can do it with dimensional analysis, where you do a multiplication and you cancel out the states that you don't need. So I'll show you both ways, and I would just say if you've been doing it the way Professor Andrews has been doing it and it's been working for you, just keep doing it. If you're having some problems with that, try the ratio method and see if that's working better for you, because it should get the same answers. And I'll show you that it does get the same answers. I know in class the other day we were all I was very confused as to why it wasn't working. Okay, so let's look at this, and I'm going to snip this and go over to Paint, because the drawing tool in this recording thing that I'm using doesn't work very well. All right. So now what we're going to do is we're going to take the value in Texas, and we're going to I'm going to start with this one up here. So we're using this column, and we're going to fill in these other two spots with this 45,000. So we're going to start with 45,000, and we're going to write that down as our first number, as our top number or our only number on the right side. So we're going to write down, let me get the right size here, we're going to write down 45,000. Okay, and then that is Texas. So this is kind of how Professor Andrews does it. She says $45,000 Texas, and then she does a multiplication. And because it's a multiplication, she says when you go back and you grab your other values, put Texas on the bottom so that the Texases cancel and you get California left over, which is the value that you want. So let's go back over and grab those numbers. Okay, so I went back and grabbed the numbers from the first problem, from question 1. And we're going to put in, as I said, we're going to do the California to Texas, because then that will, quote unquote, cancel out the Texas. So California to Texas is this one, 1.41. To Texas is 1, because we've made this into a ratio. So, or into a a ratio, into a ratio, which means all of these are kind of technically over 1. Okay, and then at that point, the Texases cancel out. And so then all we have to do after the Texases cancel out is to multiply 45,000 times the 1.41, which gets us 43,000 or 63,450. Okay, now we want to go back and we want to use the same method to get this value in New York. We want to go back and use the 45,000 because it's exact, it's not rounded. This actually isn't rounded in this case, but just in case we had rounded it. So again, we just took this 45,000 and we multiplied it by 1.41. And that got us to 63,450. Okay, so let me use a different color. I don't like that black. Okay, so now let's look at Texas to New York. It's going to be the exact same process. You're going to take 45,000 for Texas, and you're going to multiply that by the ratio of New York and Texas, but we want, in this case, because we're multiplying, we want Texas on the bottom so that it'll cancel out. And so we're going to use this ratio, and we're going to do, not that one. Where am I at? I want New York to Texas. There we go. So we want the 1.47 right here. So that's New York. And then again, Texas is like a 1 because it's a ratio. So New York over Texas is 1.47 over 1. And we multiply, the Texases cancel out, and we get that equal to You see what that comes out to be. So that's 45,000 times 1.47. It's not going to be that much different than California, because if you remember, California and New York had very close to the same cost of living. So this comes out to be 66,150. Whoops, 140, 150. Okay, so let's go back, and I'm going to show you just for verification that these are the two correct answers for that problem. Okay, so let me go back to the problem, and let me click on the keys here. And you can see 63,450 and 66,150. And again, we had answers that were close when we were doing it in class, but because I was using the other ratio, it didn't like that. And it was like, I think we had 63,380 or something like that. Mathematics is technically correct, but because Lumen is being very, exact, that little bit of a rounding difference and the little bit of a difference in the answer, it did not like it. Okay, so now we're going to come back, and you could do this method for all the rest of these. Okay, I'm going to show her method again for these two and these two, just so it's complete. But then I'm going to stop, and I'm going to show you the way that we did it in class in case you like that way better. So if you want to just skip over this and skip ahead a little bit, I'm going to show the other way after I get these filled in. Okay, so if we were going to do New York to California in this case, I'm going to start again with the New York value, so 72,000, and that's New York. And then I'm going to multiply that by the ratio of, we're dealing with New York and California. I want the ratio of New York and California, but the New York we want to be on the bottom. So California to New York. So this one right here. So California to New York. So New York is on the bottom. California is on the top. It would be the 0.96. And then you just, again, the New Yorks cancel, and we just get what we want for California, which in this case would be 72,000 times 0.96. And as just like the other ones, California is a little bit lower than New York, and then Texas is quite a bit lower. So in this case, we get 69,120. Okay, do the same thing for Texas. So we have 72,000 for New York. We're going to multiply that with New York on the bottom and Texas on the top. So we need Texas to New York. That's 0.68 for Texas. So let me erase some of these so they're not in the way. All right, so we're looking at this one. We want Texas to New York so that New York is on the bottom. So Texas to New York is right here. That's the 0.68. The New Yorks cancel, and we get 72,000 times 0.68. And that's 48,960 in this case. Remember, your numbers might be different on your homework because it regenerates different numbers for different people. But for these numbers that I had, that's the correct answer. Okay, and then last but not least, we're going to start with California's salary and see how that would compare in New York and Texas. So we're going to start with 70,000, and that's for California. And we're going to multiply it by, we want California on the bottom, and we're going to do New York first. So we want a New York to California ratio. So New York to California is this one. Let me erase this one. So New York to California is 1.04. So if we take 70,000 times 1.04, you get 72,800. And then last but not least, 70,000 for California times California on the bottom, again, just like up here, but now we want Texas on the top. So we don't want New York to California, we want Texas to California. So Texas to California is right here, and so that would be 0.71 Texas, and you're going to get the Californias to cancel out, and you're going to get 70,000 times 0.71, which is 49,700. And then if we go back up here, this one was the 69,120, and this one was the 48,960. I put them in the table, but I didn't write them over here. Okay, so these are all the correct answers for these numbers, and this is the process again that Professor Andrews taught. Now, if this is bothering you and you're having a hard time, I know some people really like ratios. Okay, so, or proportions, I should say, because if you set it up as a proportion, then you can cross multiply, and some people really like that cross multiplication. So I'm going to leave these answers here, and I'm going to show how to do it with the ratios set up in a proportion, and some of you may like that better. Let me get rid of this. All right. So when you set it up as a proportion, you want to set it up, instead of being opposite like they are in the multiplication so that they cancel, you want the proportion set up in the same way. So say you and a friend are comparing salaries. You make $10 an hour, they make $20 an hour. So you could say, oh, well, when I make $10 an hour, you make $20 an hour. And that means that if you make $100 in a day, so say this is me and you, you make $100 in a day, how much would I make in it? Or how much, if I make $100 in a day, how much would you make in a day? And then with this method, because this is an equals, not a multiplication, you can cross multiply. So this would be 20,000 equals 10x, and you can divide by 10. So that's how you set up a proportion. With a proportion, you have the two sides, because you're setting them equal. You want the items in the same position on both fractions. Okay, so let's do it with the states here. So if we're going to do this first column here, remember we had Texas and we were trying to get to California. So if we're starting with Texas at 45,000 and we want to get to California, what you have to do so that you don't mess up and use the wrong proportion the wrong ratio like we did in class the other day, is if you're going to do this proportion method, you have to always put what you are looking for on the top. So whatever you're trying to find has to be on the top. So we're looking for California and we have Texas. Again, it works to do it the other way around. It's just that Lumen has it set up this way, and so we get that answer that's a little bit off and Lumen doesn't count it correctly. So for this, we want to make sure that what we're looking for, what we don't know, is on top. What we do know is on the bottom. And then if you come over here, again, we want California, Texas. So we're going to go California to Texas. That would be 1.41 to 1. So this is California to Texas. Don't know California, have Texas. This is the ratio of California to Texas. And now we can cross multiply. So x times 1 and 1.41. And just like before, if you multiply 1.41 times 45,000, you're going to get 63,450. And then that's going to equal x times 1, which is x. So this is what we're looking for. Okay, so let's do another one just to I'll just go through all of them. It's not going to take that long. So if we're trying to go from California, whoops, not California. In this case, we want to know New York. So we know New York, and we want New York, and we know Texas. So you want to always have what you are looking for Lumen on the top. Texas, we know, is 45,000. And we're setting up a proportion. This is an equal sign, not a times. So with an equal sign, we want these to be the same order. So New York to Texas. So New York to Texas is 1.47. And if you cross multiply those, you're going to get the 66,150 that we had before. And then that's going to be equal to x times 1, which is x. So 66,150 is your answer. Okay, the next ones, you know, in this case, the New York. So we're starting with this 72,000, and we'll find California first. So we're going to try to find California, and we know New York. And if we set that equal, then over here, California to New York is 0.96 to 1. And so if we cross multiply, that gets us an x here, and then we cross multiply these, and we get the 69,120. If we do the same thing with New York as our known, but this time we're trying to find Texas, then we would have 72,000 on the bottom. Texas is the unknown, and we're looking for the ratio of Texas to New York. Texas to New York is 0.68. And again, I would only recommend this if you're struggling with the other one and you want to try something different. And my only huge recommendation on this is just remember that the x, especially if you're doing it in Lumen, the unknown thing has to be on the top and the known thing has to be on the bottom. Again, not mathematically, but just the way that Lumen has the answers set up. Mathematically, it should work either way, but all right, but these have to match up. So Texas, Texas, New York, New York, and if you multiply that, you get your x to be 48,960. And then let's do these last two. So if you have California, you're trying to get New York, and so California is 70,000, and we're trying to get New York. That's what we don't know, and so we're going to set that equal to New York to California, which is 1.04 over 1, and then when we cross multiply, 1.04 times 70,000 is 72,800 equals x. That's that answer right there. And then we'll do one last time. We need Texas, and we have California. So Texas is our unknown. California is 70,000. And that should equal Texas to California. So over here, Texas to California is 0.71 to 1. Cross multiply, you get x equals 0.71 times 70,000 came out to be 49,700. You actually end up doing the same math as far as what you put in your calculator. We're just setting it up a little differently. And just so you can see, let me do a snip of this. It doesn't like doing this. Okay, there we go. I got it. So this is a snip of our answers that we just had. I'm going to close out of this and go back to the answers, or the actual Lumen page, so that you can see. 69,120, 48,960, and then we've got 72,800 and 49,700. So hopefully that helps. As far as one of those ways, hopefully is comfortable for you and you can stick with it. I would choose a method and stick with it. So then as far as the other answers, it says based on the purchasing power, which job would you select? Well, we're looking for that job. I'm going to pull this back because I think it's easier to read. You're looking for the job where it's giving you the highest benefit, like across the board. So in this case, you can really look at any of the states. So this job in California is only valued at California cost of living at $63,450. This job's valued at $69,120, and this job's at $70,000. And then again, if you look New York, New York, New York, this job, this $45,000 in Texas is $66,150 in New York. The New York job was $72,000, and then the California salary in New York was $72,800. So again, out of all of these, it's the California salary. It's this column that's getting the biggest numbers as you compare across. So 45,000, 48,000, or 49,000. Well, 49,000 is the best, and that's coming from this California salary of 70,000. Remember, these two were computed from that number. And so in this case, that, you know, if you look at the numbers, straight up numbers, the California salary, the California job is the one that's generating the highest values in comparison. And then it says, suppose you're earning a salary of $53,000 per year in Texas. Your employer asks you to transfer to the New York office. What's your equivalent salary in New York? So you're going to do the same thing that you did. It's just we're going to take, instead of this $45,000 and then switching it to New York, you're going to start with $53,000. But the same process that we did before. So I'm going to leave it at that. If anybody has any questions, though, feel free to email me, or it's probably the easiest way. Email me or ask me in class on Tuesday. But hopefully that'll clear up any confusion that we had from the other day. I hate to have you walking out feeling more confused than when you came in. I felt really bad about that. All right, so I'll see everybody in class.